Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the Giant Comm Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, AMPRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. Also, you can read my work after, or excuse me, you can listen to the work too after this game Sunday night. It's an 8:20 start, of course, against the Falcons. Huge game. So that podcast, everything will be out after the game probably in time for you when you're waking up. By the time I record, it's probably going to be about 3 a.m. or so when it's really all said and done. So, anyways, just know that. But it will be out. And also, just planning ahead, there will not be a live stream Tuesday night. It will be New Year's Eve. I think everybody else will have other stuff on their mind or what they're doing rather than sitting there listening to Bram and I. But I will have a podcast for Monday, obviously after the game, and then also for Tuesday and two more during the week. So there you go. And you gold members, I'll be taking care of you next week. Couldn't do the private Zoom this week. We will get back to it next week. So, anyways, let's get to the news and then to my 5 things I think, because it's a huge game. And it's going to be a lot of fun, possibly on Sunday. So let's start with the news. So Marshawn Lattimore is out. I'm going to be talking about him a little bit more in a few minutes. So he's out with the hamstring injury. I don't know how severe it is. As someone else told me, if it was really that bad, they would have put him on IR. He's not on IR at this point as I talk. So if he does go on IR, bad sign. But on Sunday, after he was hurt, they were working on his hamstring, his left hamstring, same one he hurt before, and trying to just working on it to see if he'd go back in the game. And he was kind of trying to, but they're holding him out. Anyways, didn't see him do any work on Friday as well. Also out at right tackle, Andrew Wiley would expect Cornelius Lucas to go in for him. Then you have receiver De'Ami Brown. He's out. Good thing they picked up KJ Osborne with Noah Brown also out. So it's a depleted receiving core. Still got number 5. With 5, you have a lot of hope. And then Tyler Owens out, Jordan McGee out, key special teams members. So really, things are starting to add up here, folks, with the injuries. This is what happens, as you know. So there you go. Now, as far as John Allen goes, as I record this, we do not know yet if he's going to be activated. That decision has to be made by 4 o'clock Saturday. I will say, Allen told us on Thursday he's expecting to play. He's certainly preparing to play. And then Dan Quinn was highly optimistic on Friday about his chances for Sunday. They have to, if he does end up being activated, and again, my expectation as I record this is that he would be activated. He's listed as questionable for Sunday right now. But if he is activated off IR, then they have to make a corresponding move. I'm not sure where they were to go. What I do know is Fedarian Mathis has been inactive for a couple games now, and Carl Davis seemed to have moved past him. So I don't know that Mathis would be the guy or not, but I do know, like, if you're looking at areas with a cut, certainly that would be one where you'd have to look. If you're doing any of us, you're looking at that. Is that a possibility? So anyway, that's what we know with the news. So let's get to the 5 things. Number 1, I think this is going to be a lot of fun on Sunday because of the atmosphere. This could be the best atmosphere we've seen there in a long, long time. This is not, they're facing Atlanta, not a team that brings a lot of visiting fans for sure. It's a chance to clinch a playoff spot. Now, they may already have clinched a playoff spot by the time the game begins, because if Carolina beats Tampa Bay, then the Commanders are in. If not, then they have to beat Atlanta, and then they're in. If Atlanta or Tampa Bay loses one more game, they're in. So they can win. They can get to the playoffs without beating Atlanta, but it sure would be nice for this team to do it at home in this kind of an atmosphere on Sunday in front of the home fans, where they've been very, very good at home. So, and it's funny because they've had situations in the past where it's been a big home game where you're just the fans are, because you know how the fan base, you guys are the fans, so you know how it's been and how hard it's been to fully embrace this team. Well, you guys have wrapped your arms around this group for a long time, and you've been rewarded to this point. But in the past, you had the 2016 team against the Giants, where you have to win and you're in, and the Giants had already clinched. Now they were playing their starters, but they had already clinched, and they could only hang up 10 points in that game. Kirk Cousins did not have a good game. Certainly was bad in that game. So only 10 points. It wasn't all on him. Did not have a good game. Had interception late, etc. You know the whole deal. A couple years ago against the Giants. Now, that was not in this kind of a situation where you win and you clinch, but the game a couple years ago against the Giants was a night game, and you had a chance. The fan base was getting there. They're ready to fully embrace it, and you go out there and they laid a big egg. And I think, like, nights like that resonate still, right? But they don't always have a chance to clinch in the final home game. 2012 against Dallas, one of the best atmospheres that I can remember. They had, it was, you heard the "We Want Dallas" chants, "We want Dallas," and then they went out and got him. And Alfred Morris had a huge game. And it was, you thought it was going to be this big push to a lot, maybe a possible postseason run and just a lot of success after that. And it didn't lead to that. But that was a very special night inside that stadium for the people involved. So this can be that way as well. And I think this one is really going to be special if they do it, because they have to do it. Just there, you cannot assume they're going to do it because the Falcons, there's some changes there. I think, Washington's banged up clearly, but this is the opportunity ahead of them. And the Falcons have not exactly been playing great, but who knows how this goes. But it can be a special night. And it's funny because we asked Terry McLaurin early this week. Somebody asked him in our little interview with him what this night could mean to him, and not like what if you win, but like just playing in this situation after you've gone through what you've gone through the last several years in Washington. And here's what he had to say.
I'm trying not to smile. It's exciting to be to put ourselves in this position, to have a chance to have a chance at the playoffs. We don't think it's in the bag at all, though, coming in Sunday Night Football with the Falcons, who are coming off a good win, who are still in the playoff race. So it's going to be a four-quarter battle, and we're looking forward to the challenges that they present. But it's definitely exciting to be playing meaningful football at this time of year because everybody's is not. So for us to be able to put things together and have a chance to put ourselves in the playoffs is why we work so hard.
And it's not just McLaurin. It's funny because I talked to Zach Ertz about just, he and Bobby Wagner and some others a couple others have been in huge games before, Super Bowls. So how do you then basically help this group to understand like what's ahead of them and not to overdo some things? I think the whole vibe is that I don't know that there's a whole lot they have to say because they've been kind of saying it all year. So this is no different from any other game as far as their approach. This is not any different. I think that's why this group has been very good is they haven't altered their approach all year. They've been a very much a one game, what's ahead of you, what's ahead of you, what's ahead of you. And it's a cliche, one game at a time. Well, you hear every coach say it, and you don't always believe that they take that approach. This group has. And I think it's not just one game. It's really like, okay, today it's Monday, you're doing this. Today it's Wednesday, you're doing this. And, obviously there's human nature to look a little bit ahead for players, especially like what's ahead. But if you're taking care of your business today and you're preparing, you can look, so we got this team next week, whatever, but you keep your focus right now. And I think they've done a really good job of that. It's a really good vibe in that locker room. The whole brotherhood thing has been real. It's been real since the spring. You could feel it then, what it meant. Well, you knew this team would max out. I didn't know they might max out with 11, possibly 12 wins, but that's where we're at. And, so I think this is something that you guys should enjoy too, given where this whole fan base was. And I know, like, is this a finished roster? No, of course not. They've got a ways to go. We don't know if they're consistent contenders year in and year out because you have to get there. This is just year one. That's what makes this unique. But it's not just year one. It's year one after 2+ decades of massive angst, frustration, wasted opportunities, or times where you felt like you had something coming and then you didn't. And we all know what happened throughout that period. So just enjoy this. If it goes the way you hope, enjoy it because it doesn't happen very often. And I do think this could be the start. It should be the start of something because they have cap room, they have the draft picks, they have young players making key contributions. They have a lot going for them, and they have the right guy at quarterback. I mean, goodness sake. So you have all that, and so I think there's so much. It's funny because this is such. I think these coaches and players are invested in each other. And I think that's what makes this unique. So when you hear the word that you hear the most is collaborative, and that's whether it's Cliff Kingsbury's taken plays like David Blau was the one who suggested that play that Crowder scored on last week for the game-winning touchdown. That's a play that he suggested because it was something that they ran in Detroit with success. And so puts it in, Kingsbury uses it at the right time, boom, you got a game-winning score. But it's that, and Kingsbury is someone who will take from whomever to get to that point. And so is Dan Quinn, like from his coaches. And I think Joe Witt's that same way. When you have that collaborative effort, people feel invested in one another. And I would say this, like, There was zero collaboration with that offensive staff last year. And one guy, and the offensive coordinator in particular, was this or nothing. And by the end of the year, I can tell you, like, there wasn't a single guy in that offense who would have wanted that to return, certainly as an OC and certainly not as a head coach. And I think that's one of the things that I was talking to somebody who was here last year. I was like, it's so night and day from what it was. But that's why this is could be a special night for them. And then you have Dan Quinn. He, of course, coached the Falcons, took them to the Super Bowl, was fired, 3 years ago. And, this was the team that gave him his first head coaching chance. But he's not going in there with this, oh, I got to show them. He told us that he had already played them, he's played them in Dallas again when he was in Dallas. So that part of it is out the window for him. Here's the other funny thing, like Arthur Blank, the Falcons owner, was one of the people who recommended Quinn for this job because he thinks very highly of Dan Quinn. And then you have Raheem Morris, who is the guy that replaced Dan Quinn. And so you always wonder how that dynamic is. But I remember when I wrote the story on Quinn a couple weeks ago, or a month ago, 2 months ago, just about his journey from that point. And he's a big Raheem Morris fan. Like, and it's easy to see why. Like, they're both very energetic, both very upbeat. I always enjoyed covering Raheem and talking to Raheem. And when Quinn was fired, one of the things, he went out to Hawaii for several days and watched the first game because he wanted to support Raheem. He wanted to support the players because he wanted Raheem to win. Like, he wanted good things for him. It's hard to be in that mode, in that mindset when you get fired, right, from something that you love doing. He did say it was very hard to watch that first game and he couldn't watch anymore, but he still wanted to see Raheem have success. So I think he's very happy to see them. So he's not going in there with any sort of, and Quinn is not a guy who latches onto bitterness and anger and all that. So I think for all this, and it goes back to, and finally the last point on this is I'm rambling a little bit, but I think it's a big game for all these reasons. Then you go back to, okay, you're 10-5. You have the coach in Dan Quinn, who there was that narrative after the season and like, oh, he's not the guy they really wanted. Well, those people saying that don't know who they really wanted because they weren't talking to anybody, or they weren't talking to the right people. And I know from the start, yes, Ben Johnson high on that list. Yes, Mike McDonald high on that list. And yes, Dan Quinn was high on that list. And I do think it helped to have a guy like Bob Myers around. Bob Myers is a guy that built championship teams in Golden State. He also did it with a coach in Steve Kerr, who was not necessarily, he was not necessarily the master strategic guy or whatever that, but he knew how to manage people. He knew how to build that culture within the locker room, et cetera. That's what Quinn does. So I think, I don't know how much, as far as Myers' input, clearly there would be some input there, but that's the sort of stuff that he would look for, that he would look for that would help the search. But it's why it's going the way it is right now, because I don't know that you can look, I think it'd be awfully, awfully difficult for anybody else to have come in here and brought the same kind of energy, which is building badly needed. But Quinn did, and again, it squashed the narrative of, you know, I some people thought he'd be fired within a year or two, right? I mean, there was so many ridiculous takes because they were following narratives, and you can't follow narratives. You've got to follow the logic here. And the logic always said that he was high on the list, and not just logic, but people I talked to. And it may have been that they started one way, and the more you interview, you get to another point because you realize that, oh, this jumps out. And I think that is how it was with Quinn. He wasn't necessarily the number one guy right away. I don't know necessarily if there was a top guy. I know, again, there would be definitely an infatuation with Johnson because of that offense. But I'll be honest, man, we have no clue what kind of head coach that guy's going to be because, he's a guy, really good offensive mind that guarantees nothing. So, what we know with Quinn is he knows how to build what he's built here. That's one reason why this team is very good. And it's going to be why people like to play here. And it's why free agents will want to come here as well. So anyways, on to number two. All right, I think staying along those lines, I think a big key to the success here has been the unearthing of talent at the end of the roster who have become key contributors. So let's look at this. Like Nick Bellore, he's going to be a captain this week. He's one of the 3 captains this week. But it's more than that. Like, he is a very good special teams player, very good. And it's funny, I think Jeremy Reeves would love to see both he and Bellore make all pros as special teamers. I don't know that it's ever been done, but I do think both are at that level. And I think, when with Bellore, Quinn will always he'd talk about him as a glue guy, but also on special teams, he and Reeves, the conversations they have are just at a different level. and they can do things and play things off one another. And it's funny because like Reeves has had a really good year and it's not quite as loud as the past because of the attention paid to him. There were times last week where he was getting basically triple teamed. You have double teams coming at him and he'd make a move, get through, and then there'd be a third guy waiting to get him afterwards. That's where other guys have to kind of come through. That's where Tyler Owens was a big benefactor of that, but knows how to hurt people, when you pay attention to all these other guys like Ballore and Reeves. But when you get guys like that who are that passionate about special teams, it raises the level of others around them. And I think that's what Ballore does. That's what Jeremy Reeves does. And I think when you have guys like that, it makes a difference. Jamison Crowder, big catch last week, just a veteran who continues to persist, to persevere in a career where a couple of years ago it kind of looked like maybe not done, but was he done as a big contributor? But he's still out there making plays because he can win in a quick way, and they use him in that way. Olamide Zaccheaus, same kind of guy. Like you have a guy that they'll talk about, Quinn or it's Quinn or Kingsbury talk about him, how he sets a high standard for those around him and the way that he works, the expectations that he has. You don't have to be a top player like McLaurin to be a really good leader. There's a lot of ways to do that. And it's by being a pro. And I think that's the key. I mean, you watch him chase down guys from the other side of the field or to try and get back in the play. And there's a fumble and he's recovering because he comes from 60 yards away because he's following the play. Little things like that, the way he's with teammates, even in games where he's not doing a whole lot, like that stuff jumps out. Sheldon Day, and this is, I think Sheldon Day is a really big one for me because I just enjoy watching him and the way he's progressed. I'll be honest, folks, after training camp, like during training camp, like I wasn't seeing it. And, you just wonder, like, he's a shorter guy, he's squattier, like, is he going to be able to do, is he big enough? Are they just, but the more he played, the better he has gotten. And I think there's a reason why. In fact, here's what Day told me about why it's working for him here when it hasn't worked for him like this in other places.
I guess like as a player, you always know who you are, but when people can kind of unlock that, now they give you the confidence to say, "Hey, Sheldon, go be you. Hey, Sheldon, go do this." It gives a different type of level of, I guess, inwardness where it's like, okay, I can do this. They have confidence in me to do this, and I'm not playing like I'm scared and things like that. Just playing free, loose, and also having fun. The room is amazing. Got guys like DP and Jay who always challenge you and one-on-one reps and things like that to make you elevate and things like that. So it's been cool.
So in the past, did you feel like you didn't get that from coaches? It was harder to get that?
It's more so restrictive. So it's like, we want you to play just like this, and you have to play perfect. And here is, if you do make a mistake, make it 100 miles per hour because your brother has your back. And when you have a room like we do where everything just seems to gel and like we're playing for each other and not playing for individual stats and things like that, it's been cool.
See, clearly the coaches have embraced Day. And I think you see that, like, there were times last week against the Eagles where he's getting off the blocks and making plays because of that leverage. He's short. He's only 6'1", barely, maybe, I'd say barely 6'1", but that, like, he's going up against guys who 6'3", 6'4". So that can, if you're driving you off, that's fine. But if you're getting in their pads first, as he said, they're always taught, low man wins. So, I think it's something that he uses his height to his advantage. It's not tall, but he uses it to his advantage because of that. So just things like that, like, Jalen Holmes, contributor, came in off the street. Noah Brown, they get him late in camp before he got hurt, a big contributor. Noah Igbenogany, he was an up and down former first round pick who found a home here in the slot, and they like his toughness. He's not a big guy, but he's tough and he's done well in the slot. Like, they keep hitting on those end of the roster guys. And as Day told me, he's like, that's a credit to what Quinn has built here. And also, and because of what he said, but also what Adam Peters has looked for, that his whole group has looked for. And it's funny because one of the ways that Day said that they incorporate some of these guys to make them feel at home right away. He said Quinn will introduce them up in front of the crowd and he goes, everybody's cheering for him. They're like, now sit your butt down. And it's just kind of just breaks, not so much tension, but it kind of makes it a lighthearted moment, but they are welcoming you. And Day was telling me how, like, after he's here the first time, all these guys were telling him, hey, this is where the meeting rooms are. Hey, this is where you do this. This is where you do that. This is where you got to go here. So all that stuff, like, it builds that. There's a fostering of that, but it's also finding what the guy does well and then tapping into that. I think this group, as much as any overall, has done that very, very well. And so when you get guys like that and you get situations like that, you get teams like this. All right, number 3. I think Jayden Daniels, his prep work is why that he's in this spot, why being talked about as a guy, not just top 10 guy, is he a top 5 quarterback? As Craig Hoffman and I had that conversation earlier this week, actually Bram and I too. So, that's something, but the preparation is what jumps out for Daniels. We've talked about it a lot, but there's little things like on Tuesdays, the quarterbacks get the play sheet or they get the game plan from the coordinators on Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, he's in a walkthrough at 6 a.m. with Kingsbury and Tavita Pritchard, and he's got it down pat. That's kind of incredible. And that doesn't happen very often. Like I don't, it's hard for veterans to do that, let alone rookies to get it like that. To the point where there's a lot of motion, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of this and that, to the point where he's not making mistakes in that. And sometimes he may even correct something that if somebody, if Kingsbury says like something's lined up here, he might correct that because he's got a handle on it so well. Like you want to know again, the reason why this kid's going to be really good for a long time is because of that. It's not just because of skill. We see the skill, but the processing speed, the ability to develop and grow as a quarterback will be done in those moments when you have that stuff down pat. And it's why he can feel comfortable in those 2-minute situations. And I think that's why he's going to be good for a long time. And when you get guys like that, like Kingsbury has been a rejuvenated coach this year. Now, I think, he was like that when he got here before he even had Daniels. I think he was just excited to be here. Then you start working with a guy who puts in that kind of work, and it just heightens that rejuvenation, whatever you want to call it, by a factor of 10, because you just don't get guys like that very often. And to be honest, he didn't have that guy in Arizona, but he's got him here. And so I think he's going to be reluctant to leave a guy like that for any old job. So remember that when all these head coaching jobs are open, that it's not a slam dunk that he's going to leave. Now, could he? Sure. But I think when you have a quarterback who's putting in that kind of work, you know that you can take your offense from here to here over the course of, a year or two, right? And so like this is just getting started. Just always remember that. So, I think that. I don't need to say much more than that, but I do like to point out the kind of work that Daniels puts in, because it's not just, hey, the kid's really talented. I've seen really talented quarterbacks here before. They did not put in this kind of work at all. And so like that's why he's different, and it's why he's going to last a while. So number 4, the Lattimore deal is still a risky one, right? And it's a risk you'd have to say was worth taking for this team because they needed to find a corner. However, and there's still a lot more to be determined on this. I think there was a couple things with the Lattimore deal, just kind of revisiting it for a minute. Again, there was risk involved at all times. I mean, 3rd and 4th round pick and a 6th round pick. The key was he was signed for 2 more years. If he wasn't signed for 2 more years, you cannot make this trade because you don't know where, you need to make sure you maximize. If you're going to give up that kind of stuff, you've got to maximize the situation here. So there were other cornerbacks that were available. DJ Reed from the Jets. The Jets didn't seem to want to trade him, but you certainly couldn't have given up that much unless you re-sign a guy like that. But anyways, for Lattimore, so revisiting this, was it worth the deal? Was the deal worth it, knowing that he's not playing Sunday? I don't know what he's going to do for the finale against Dallas, and I certainly don't know if they make the playoffs what his availability will be. Again, the feeling that I talked to some people that if it was that bad, they would have put him on IR, but who knows if it may just be they're going to wait and see, because why not? So at least there's some question with it, but he is a guy that has injury history. And that's where this thing was we'd always talk about, if healthy, he's a really good player. And he hasn't played more than 10 games since 2021. So the last few years, it's been like that. He's got hamstring issues going back to college and high school, I believe. So definitely in college. So he has missed time almost every year that he's been in the NFL. The first 4 or 5 years, it wasn't a lot of time. There were a few games here, a few games there, but at least he was available most of the time, and that's what they need him to be. Can he get over this and be available for them? Well, they need him to be to make this trade work. I still don't mind the trade because when you look at the offseason, where are you going to find a guy in this situation that would be better than Lattimore? Maybe, but the draft, it's not a great year for corners in the draft. Are you guaranteed to get one with your pick? No, and you may want to go somewhere else. as well. So, you have that. The free agent market, it's going to be, it would be kind of iffy. Reed was the one that I was talking about from the Jets. The expectation would be that he might get over 20 million a year. So, and that's just with per year. But then you've got signing bonus and all that guaranteed money. Well, with Lattimore, they're not paying a sign, but they have a $16 million a year cap hit for him next year. I think it goes up or 18. It goes up to 18. So I think well, actually, it's 18 and then 18.5 over the next 2 years for him. So he's still right now, he is in 2026, he'd be have the 10th highest cap hit among corners. Well, that's going to change by the time we get to 2026. If he's still on that deal, he will be much lower than 10th on that list. So, this, when you're looking to the future, like when you kind of have to factor that in, is what can you get him at, et cetera. If you went out and got another corner, is there someone else that's going to be better for you? And I'm not sure that there would be. Charvarius Ward is another guy that would be out there. Obviously, Adam Peters knows him, and they still went and made this move. And he hasn't had the best year. I don't know the cost of him, and would it be better than for him versus Lattimore? Well, obviously, you want someone who's going to be out on the field. So I still think like this, but this is a trade that we're gonna have to see how this plays out over the next couple of years. It was never just about this year. Right now, it does not look great because he's been hurt. And if it continues that way, then it was a swing and a miss. And it would be the first one that Adam Peters really had for all the moves they've made. And, that's going to happen if you make some. I mean, shoot, Joe Gibbs made some bad trades when he came back the second time. So, that's going to happen. But we don't know that it's going to go that way. What we do know is he's played one game injury free. The next game he was hurt. And now we don't know when he'll be back. So, the other part is too, though, when you see him on there, I can understand why they wanted to take a swing for him because he adds a lot. And I think it's, as far as replacing him Sunday, yeah, obviously Sanders still starts on one side. Then it's going to be a Mike Davis and then maybe and St. Juste rotating on the other side. I don't know if they're even going to rotate, but I know those are the two options on that side. Igbenogany will stay in the slot. But I think what it's telling is that St. Juste is now to the point where it's not a guarantee that he'll even play in this game, or how much he would play. And I think when you watch Lattimore versus St. Juste, obviously there's a difference in skill level, but I think it's a difference in confidence too, because St. Juste has a lot of skill. He's got the length, he's got the size, he's got measurables, but does he have the confidence of Lattimore? Does he have the fight of Lattimore? The answer is no, he does not. And that plays out time and time again. It's why you're in position where maybe you're giving up some things because with your hand, you're too grabby, you're too this, you're too that. You're not in position to make a play because you're too worried about this. Lattimore gets up and challenges you, and he's not. Clearly he's not going to make every play, but he's going to challenge you, and he's going to get back up and do it again. And I think that's a thing he adds more than anything. It's a thing they need the most in the secondary, and they're still going to have to go out and get another guy. So that's the problem. Is it wasn't just getting Lattimore; you had to get a couple guys. So you got this guy. Now you're going to have to find another one where there is in the draft, even though it's not a good draft. There are going to be some guys you can look at who can be on the other side of a guy like Lattimore, but they need to make sure that he's healthy because it's harder when this is why there's the risk. And again, they knew the risk involved because they know the injury history here. If he hits, it's really good. And if he doesn't, then it's like, okay, you lost 2 extra picks that you had. You did get one back. And then you move on. But sometimes that happens. And you have to, if you're a GM, you have to be willing to accept that might be the outcome, especially when it's your first big one. But again, we're still far from saying, oh, that was failed or that was not. But I do think it's worth revisiting, at least to a degree, where this is because he hasn't been able to play. And again, when you look at 2025, I think right now he'd be 7th in the cap hit. After this offseason, he's going to be lower. So he'd still be probably a top 10 corner for cap hits. I think when he's playing, he's still a very, very good corner. So, but he's got to be available. And I would say this too, like, what if he got through this year and you make a trade for him before the draft for a 3rd and 4th round pick for the final 2 years of the contract? I still think that would be not a bad move at all, given what he is and what he could add and knowing that. But, the point is, it was never just about this year, which is a good thing because this year it hasn't been a help aside from one game. So anyways, there you go. And could they reconstruct his deal? I don't restructure his deal. Maybe. I think you want to wait and see on that because the health thing has to play out that way. But I think what he adds in terms of the mindset and et cetera is a big deal. All right, so let's get to the Atlanta O. I think Michael Penix is an interesting guy, and I think he did a nice job in his first start against the Giants. What I liked is he was poised. He has a really good arm, as we know, they described it as a laser, but you see that on film, right? I think he was tough to sack. The Giants did blitz him. I think it was like 7 times. Didn't get him down on that. There was one time linebacker comes off the edge, kind of wraps him, but he's able to kind of break free from it and then go at least throw the ball away. The Falcons do not, despite the talent they have, man, on offense, they are not a prolific passing team. Like they've had 1 touchdown pass in the last 6 games, 10 interceptions during that time. It's been brutal, and that's obviously a lot on Kirk Cousins. That's why Penix is in. When you watch Kirk, like I think if you're a Washington fan, you had to have hoped that he would have played in this game because he looked bad. Like he couldn't move with the Achilles. You saw like when you watch him get pressured, you're not seeing him be able to get out of anything. Did not have a lot of zip on his throws as the season was going on. That's why I think Penix gives him some fresh energy for that. But again, the word poise, he was able to move in the pocket a little bit and just away from some pressure. But the one thing is like he has a quick release. They use a lot of quick game because of that and wasn't challenging a lot downfield. There are guys that you can get it down the field to, Drake London, among them, but a lot of it was 5 yards and in. So just a lot of crossers, a lot of quick hitters. You've got to be aware of the quick hitters and then tackle well after that. That's going to be a big key. Gets a zip on the ball, right? But the other thing too is I think one of the big things for them is moving him off his spot. So I was talking to one player, was like, you watch that national championship game, and that's what Michigan did really well. They moved him off the spot. It led to some inaccurate throws. And there were some guys that were open, man. But he couldn't hit him. He didn't hit him because maybe you disrupt the timing, you speed up the timing, and even if you're moving him off his spot most of the game, even on the times where maybe he's in the pocket, your internal clock feels differently, and you leads to some mistakes, unforced errors, but it's because of what was set up before that. So that's something to as well. So again, quick release. I liked what I saw from him. These guys really liked him. I think I remember after the draft, like talked to some people here, they thought that all the guys they brought in, it was McCarthy, it was Penix, it was Drake May, it was obviously Jayden, that all those guys could have had a chance for success. And they were pretty high, and you can extend that to Caleb Williams and Bo Nix, but especially the guys they brought in were guys that they really were high on and felt like they would each be really good. They just obviously like Jayden a lot more. So, but there is talent around him. Drake London, good big target. Bijan Robinson, really good running back, all around back. Kyle Pitts has not lived up to what his draft status was, but he's still a danger in the red zone, right? Or should be. They're not a good red zone offense, but they give him the talent, give him their offensive line blocking. Darnell Mooney is a good receiver. Like, I don't know how they're not. So I'll be curious to see what they do going forward with Penix. But it hasn't been a great thing. They will run in some play action boots with him. Watch for that. And then I wouldn't be shocked if they were going to try and get Frankie Louvu matched on some sort of wheel or rail route with Bijan Robinson just to see if they can take advantage there. So that's something to watch as well. So anyways, with Robinson, it's a very good offensive line. He excels and they excel at creating cutback lanes. So those stretch zones, those outside zones, cutting back up the middle. To me, a big key when you watch the games where he had runs where he lost yardage, it was all started with the defensive ends getting upfield and forcing him to cut back inside. And then you have to get some interior quickness. You'd see like a Johnny Newton's going to have to get inside the guard and getting down the line because you can get that end upfield cutting them back. That's where you got to clean up. That's where they do, because otherwise they're opening gaps. You're creating lanes for him, and he's really good at reading and cutting back, stringing it out, cutting back. And it's hard for the linebackers because if you can't overflow, but once you start flowing, if you start stringing it out, you're screwed. So that's why the end's got to get upfield fast. Once you start stringing it out, man, he's going to get 8 to 10 yards because that's just what you're just creating gaps. Well, you saw that with Alfred Morris back in the day. He was really good at doing that as well. So the ends have to get upfield. That to me is a big key. And then the interior quickness, Newton, if they get Allen back, indeed, Payne, Sheldon Day, like I think Day could have some say. This is, he and Newton are kind of made for some of this stuff, this cutback stuff. So I think that's something to watch, but that's what you have to watch out for with this offense. You can't let them go off and control it. It's not a dangerous offense, but it's an offense that can certainly hurt you for sure. Then you look at the Atlanta D. They're just kind of middle of the road, in most categories, right? Not great in pressuring for the season. They have had 16 of their 26 sacks have come in the last 4 games, but even during that time, their pressure rate is about the middle of the pack. So it's not like they've just been swarming guys. They've just been better at getting guys down for sure. I think one of the things that will help Daniels here is a very quick processor. So when they blitz, like one of the teams I looked at I watched like all the 20+ yard gains over the last several weeks. Well, the Chargers had a few of those with Justin Herbert. Part of the reason to me was he was really good at getting to the second and third receivers, right? In a timely manner. You get to them in a rhythm within the structure of your reads, you're going to be okay. Right. And so I think that's something that Daniels has working for his advantage, that he's very good with that. And I think, again, watching Herbert, he was good at that against them, and it made a big difference. I think they had 4 or 5 20+ yard throws. So that was, but again, in rhythm, get to your guys, they will be there. Arnold, let's see, defensive end. The one guy, like, again, they don't have great pass rushers. Arnold Katie is a guy that, I've seen him win on the right side. So he'll be going up against Cornelius Lucas. Just something to watch on that side. Maybe not getting him down, but maybe pressuring on that side. Grady Jarrett still inside, still a threat. Not what he once was, but still a threat. So I think, Jesse Bates, the safety, really good. They will work some stunts in some games up there. And as far as the run defense goes, they've been kind of up and down. The last 2 games really good, but the last 2 games against the Raiders and the Giants, not exactly great run teams at this point. But when I'm watching, like, there are definitely going to be some gaps for Jayden to move up in the pocket for. I saw other quarterbacks who couldn't take advantage of that. Drew Lock is really bad. Desmond Ridder is not the kind of guy who's going to hurt you. So I think this is going to be a big challenge for the Falcons defense. But I do think, like, I don't always feel like their defensive backs play with great awareness. That's why it hurts not having De'Ami Brown, because to get downfield, another guy with Terry McLaurin, to have something like that. But I think this is a game where the weather's going to be bad. It could be bad all day. It could be raining most of the day going in the game. So they need to have a really strong run game as well. Can they get there? They've just been bad the last 2 weeks for the running backs. You can't keep relying. Well, I say that, but then Jayden Daniels can get with his legs, do a lot of stuff with his legs. But you've got to get more from the run game with the running backs, in particular, and Brian Robinson, 2 up and down this year with him, with the offensive line. I don't feel like the line's been great the last 2 weeks at all. So they have to have a better game, but Robinson does as well. So, because I think if you don't want to just become one-dimensional every week. You want to be building something with that as you go into playoffs. Because if not, it's something you definitely have to build on for something you definitely have to figure out for next year to become a better, more consistent run team, to do it not just against teams like Tennessee or whatever, against a team like a Baltimore, a team like Philadelphia, more consistently with your backs, not just Jayden Daniels. We know what he can do, but those backs have to be more of a factor. And I think this week as well, just because you're losing all these guys on offense at the skill position, you got to get more from the run game. So can they do it? The Falcons, again, the run D at times can be pretty good. Other times it's kind of up and down, right? So the Vikings ran pretty well on them. So anyways, that's it. I think it's going to be a fun day, fun night. I like where this team is headed because I think they just have a strong belief in themselves. I think that matters. The big question for me is, with how does Penix fare in his first primetime game like this? Is a big spotlight game. And can they slow Bijan Robinson? Can they at least control him the way they did Barkley in the second half? It wasn't just because Jalen Hurts was out, though that was a factor for sure, but it was more than that. So they did a good job with the gaps. You've got to stay that. But again, ends have to set the edge. If you do that, then you got a chance to maybe force them back to where the help is and have a better night. So anyway, folks, enjoy Sunday. It's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait for the atmosphere. And again, I'll be back after the game, wrapping up the Commanders-Falcons. So I'll talk to you next time.